Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, so sorry about the technical difficulties. That's kind of
Part of the business.
part of the
Right.
business of recording simultaneously from New Jersey, right?
Correct.
And California,
Yeah.
and Colorado.
We have to adapt. It's all good. It's all good.
That's just the world we live in today, though, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so
It's
cool.
complicated.
It is. It is. Why don't we just start off by, can you tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is Paul Prestia. I'm an attorney. I specialize in civil rights and criminal defense to some extent. And do you want me to get more personal?
Yeah, sure.
I'm a father. I have daughters, and I'm mostly vegan. I cook a lot, and that's pretty much it. I'm very passionate about what I do. I don't usually don't do anything unless I'm passionate about it.
That's really cool. It sounds like you're really passionate about like animal and human rights.
Well, I just like to eat clean.
Well, yeah, and the
Most
animals
importantly,
too,
and
right?
animals too. I do have a cat. I do have a fluffy cat, believe it or not. I don't know if I
Yeah,
want to
so
speak to that, but I do.
gotta love them.
Of course.
So I guess we'll just get a little bit into why we're here to talk. You were in a documentary called Time on Netflix that I think aired a few years ago. And can you tell us a little bit about that documentary and the case that it was about?
Time the Kalief Browder story is a documentary that is still currently airing on Netflix.
Oh, right. Yeah, I just watched it. Well, so did Cam. It was
Oh,
incredible.
okay, cool.
Mhm.
Um, it's about the story of a young man named Kalief Browder who was in jail, who was arrested in 2013 for a robbery of a backpack. He was charged with a felony. He was held on bail at Rikers Island for 3 years. And he was a teenager at the time of his arrest. He was 16. For 2 of those years, almost consecutively, he uh, languished in solitary confinement at Rikers Island, which, to anyone who doesn't know, are some of the harshest conditions, in our country that someone could be kept in, someone could be confined in during the course of his case. And I'll remind you that he was arrested and charged, but not convicted. So technically, he was innocent, and it turned out that he was innocent as at the end of the case, 3 years later, the Bronx District Attorney's Office dismissed the charges against him. And he was released, sent home. And that's where I met him. And I began to represent him for him and his family, really, for over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. But for the 2 years I was with him, um, he had gone through so much in solitary confinement as a teenager that he really had a hard time getting adjusted, and he had demons and nightmares from his experience, as you could imagine. I could get into more detail about that, but ultimately in June of 2015, he took his life 2 years after he came home, almost to the day. And a short time later, we began filming a documentary with Jenna First called Time the Kalief Browder Story, about his life and his story and what he went through. And the amazing thing about the documentary was it was sort of a living documentary, because even though it was about Kalief and his life and experience in solitary confinement and his ordeal with the system, with our criminal justice system, it also continued while his mother and father took over the case. So it went through almost the next year after that, or 2 years,
Mhm.
until his mother passed away. So it's very tragic that, in the short course of a year or a year and a half, he and his mother, passed away for different reasons. So, it's a story that's intense and tragic. And I think most importantly, it exposed the flaws of our system. Uh, to people who would have no idea that this could exist in our country or in a
Mhm.
city like New York. So I was just fortunate to be part of that.
Mhm.
And I know that several attorneys turned down his case immediately. Do you know why that is, and why did you take it?
I can't speculate as to why another attorney wouldn't take that case. I think from a legal standpoint, there may have been there could be an issue in terms of going forward on a false arrest claim. When you sue the city, you sue under certain civil rights claims,
Mhm.
1983 claims, constitutional claims. And I do believe that there was probably an issue looking back at it, or I mean, there was an issue in the beginning with regard to the false arrest claim, which is very technical, and maybe that's why some attorneys would not have taken it. But just from talking to him that first time I met him, I knew that if even if that was an obstacle, there was no way I couldn't represent him as an attorney and as a human being, as a father, that I was going to take his case. And if there was any obstacle with regard to, uh, legally as to like any of our claims, I thought that, it was worth a fight. It was worth a fight because his experience as a whole was so shocking to me that I knew that right then and there when I met him that he needed someone to take this case and to go forward and fight for him because he had been through too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and what was the kind of public's response after the documentary aired?
I think there was, I mean, there was an outpouring of support for Kalief, even up till the day he took his life. Even from the little um, media exposure that the case had at that point, and especially through Jennifer Goneman's article in the New Yorker before the law, which was published in September 2014, that garnered a lot of attention to his case from the city officials, Rosie O'Donnell, even Jay Z came
Mhm.
forward and was aware of what he went through, and eventually we met him at some point later on. But I think the public was like truly inspired by his story, and I think the documentary just exacerbated that in the most compelling way possible.
Yeah.
It
Not
really
to
opened people's eyes.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and the thing is too is that it's his story is not unusual, right? I mean, it may be an extreme case, but it's happening all day, every
Right.
day.
Yeah, no, it wasn't unusual at the time.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that some of the reforms have changed that, but I'm sort of a cynic.
Can
Well,
Paul,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah, totally. Me too. Go ahead, Cam.
yeah, Paul,
About a lot of
could you elaborate on that actually? Like how unusual or usual is it for uh somebody like Kalief, a 16-year-old, to get sent to a place like Rikers with the evidence that they had, or what was the evidence they had, you know?
Well, I think at the time, the thing that really struck me, even before he told me about the hard details of of what he went through, namely, the suicide attempts that he made while he was in solitary confinement. I think the thing that struck me at the time was, there was going back, there was all the talk was about police brutality. Eric Gardner was a very prominent case at that time.
Mhm.
Michael Brown in Ferguson uh, was a very public case at that time, very publicly discussed in the media. And Kalief's case really exposed every part of our system, from the police department who arrested him based on really, really flimsy and not so credible witness testimony. And, I realized that right away when I spoke to him. in terms of the arrest and the duration between the actual alleged occurrence to the time that he got arrested. And so not only from the police officers involved, but also from the district attorney's office, who prosecuted him indefinitely for a one witness robbery case. I mean, that was incredible to me that they could, just sit on that case for that long. And then, of course, to the conditions in Rikers Island and the fact that a teenager could be charged with a felony with a robbery at 16 and held in solitary confinement. Nobody really talked about solitary confinement back then. And his case just blew that wide open. But to me, that was the most powerful aspect of it. The fact that it encompassed every part of our criminal justice system, and it just exposed it. And it even goes so far as like the judges who were involved in his case, who oversaw his case, who were so apathetic, like they didn't fucking care. He kept coming up. They knew he was in jail, but how many times can you adjourn a case?
Right. And it was for such ridiculous reasons, like, oh, the DA is on vacation this week or whatever. So he can sit in jail or prison for longer.
It was such bullshit. And I'm glad that, through this story, some of those people who were involved, who did nothing, who really showed a reckless disregard. I wouldn't even say negligent, but just a reckless disregard for upholding what they're supposed to do, and that's the justice, were, sort of called out for that, because any one of them could have done something rather than, allowing this to persist for 3 years.
Do you want to go ahead, Cam?
I'm sorry. I may have gotten off your question. I apologize.
Oh, no, not at all. I think our listeners
we just both have 1,000 questions. So
I think, but we'll keep it to an hour. We're good about time management. We try to be. I think our listeners would like to hear about how many times, because when I watched the documentary, it seemed like an almost constant revolving door for Kalief as he was in and out of solitary and going back and forth to court. Like, how many times did he go in front of, I assume it's the judge?
My recollection was he went to court 28 times, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
It was 20, close to 30 times that he was literally woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning, put on a bus to the courthouse. Oftentimes he wouldn't see a judge, wouldn't even see his attorney. They would just keep him in the pens because they don't bring each defendant out to see a judge every time they have court. If nothing's happening, a lot of times the attorney would just stand up and just say, I waived my client's appearance today. And he and the judge and the prosecutor would just pick another day because the DA wasn't ready. So nothing was happening. So who fucking cares, right? But Kalief would spend the whole day in court, and many individuals have to go through this in the back of the courthouse, under like disgusting fucking conditions, and then go back to Rikers Island, which is really not much better, actually worse. But I guess that was like his field trip for the day, to get on a bus and come to court as a teenager when he should have been in school.
Right. And can we talk a little bit about the idea of, innocent until proven guilty, and how that's not really a guarantee for all Americans, especially people of color, and maybe a little bit about the 13th Amendment?
Yeah, I think there's always a presumption of guilt in a lot of these cases. And I think that sort of stems, if you want to get deep, systematically from
we do.
Relationship between prosecutors and police officers in general. When you walk into a prosecutor's office, police officers are the witnesses for the most part. So there is that built up trust between them. So I think that there's that inherent bias. When a police officer makes an arrest, then he did the right thing, and he did it for the right reasons. So that being said, I don't want to digress too much, but I think there's a presumption of guilt uh, in our society. I think there's also, there's a whole spectrum of guilt and innocence, right? It's like this whole conundrum. You can take any case and look at the evidence in a case, and in some cases, there's more evidence pointing towards guilt than in others, right? So if there's a case where you have a bloody knife and you have someone standing there saying, I killed my wife, and a witness who saw the whole thing, then yeah, they're basically guilty, right? But we give them a trial because they have their day in court and whatever defense they might come up with. But, I think there's that gray area, and so many young men of color get grouped into that they're already presumed guilty, right? Without even a chance to prove their innocence. They aren't even given a chance to prove that. And whether it's by, the attorneys they are assigned to them as public defenders, or the fact that, sometimes, they feel compelled to take a plea just because they don't think they'd have a chance to win a trial. That the odds are just stacked against them. That's just how it is.
Well, yeah, which is why Kalief was at Rikers, which is also known as Little Guantanamo Bay, for 3 years, because he refused to take a plea because they force so many Black men every year into taking pleas. And, there's the cash bail system, which is just completely fucked. And I don't know if you could speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what really made Kalief a hero to me. And I always told him, like, you're a hero. Don't do anything, like, don't hurt yourself. You don't know what you've done. Like, he knew. I told him, like, this is big. This is bigger than you, and just the fact that he stood up for himself as a kid, he was just a kid. I think is so important, and like what makes his story so powerful. But that being said, bail reform has actually come a long way. I think it's one of the things that has really improved, at least, in where I'm from in the city, in New York. Cash bail was often a means to keep someone in jail. And when someone's in jail, they're more inclined to take a plea, right? Because they just want to get home. Like, who wants to fucking stay in jail? Let me get home as soon as possible. And obviously you have to live with the stigma of a criminal record, et cetera, for your whole life. But that being said, the change in bail reform, I mean, I've noticed it, and I think it's certainly one of the reforms that has actually helped keep people out of jail and allowed them to return to court and live their lives while their case is pending. So, that was definitely a necessary change, because cash bail was such an arbitrary system back then.
Yeah.
It would depend on the judge or the prosecutor. It wasn't always objective.
That's great.
What are some other reforms, Paul, you think that are left for, like, this country? What's left for us to tackle?
I mean, I still think that there are certainly reforms that could be made. I think one of the things that I've seen sort of post-Kalief is men that come home after their sentences are overturned, after their convictions are overturned, and just the fact that how difficult it is to assimilate into society after you've been gone for several years without really the support, resources, or help to do that. I think it's a real challenge, for people to do that. So I think more needs to be done with that, and I think that will go a long way, because, and I think for the most part there have been some good reforms, which includes bail, but I think there's always something, reentry. But I think, the crux of what has been happening in society lately is really police conduct, and just how they make the arrests, and police reform. So I think that's really been the big thing. But There's really no answer. Really, there's no easy answer when it comes to that.
Mhm. And I believe as a, product of Kalief's case, they did stop putting minors in solitary confinement, which was, it seems like a small win because it seems like it should be like obvious not to torture children, but I don't know. I guess it's pretty good that that
Yeah,
happened, right?
they did that. They did that in New York while his case was pending. So right after Jennifer Goneman's article, Mayor De Blasio and the city ended solitary confinement for juveniles before they started with raise the age, etc. So he stopped, they abolished that for juveniles, which, to me was interesting that we had filed a lawsuit and claiming all these abuses and violations of Kalief's rights, including the fact that he was a teenager in solitary confinement and, that he was tortured. And the mayor goes ahead and agrees, obviously the Kalief was the impetus of that legislation to abolish solitary confinement for juveniles. And while that's being done, and that's a great accomplishment on one hand, on the other hand, the city of New York in our lawsuit is still basically deflecting any liability and not acknowledging or taking accountability for what happened, and ended up dragging the case on for a couple more years, before they did. So that really fucking pissed me off. Thinking back to that part of how things went down. And, obviously his case compelled President Obama to be the first sitting president to visit a federal prison and to abolish solitary confinement for juveniles. So there's no doubt his impact, on our system. So, and I think it's fair to say that those changes would not have occurred without his story being brought to light. And I think that would have been important to him to know that.
I think
That was
that
his message.
and this solitary piece was such a just I don't think there's any way to watch the documentary or do any research on the case. Like, how effective is solitary confinement in your opinion, Paul? And like, is it even, let alone effective, is this a humane practice?
No, it's totally inhumane. There's to me, there's no benefit of it whatsoever. I guess I could see it being used in very limited circumstances in prisons where you have an adult who has been convicted of a crime, and only then, in only very limited instances for very short amounts of time. But just to use it so lawlessly, back before that, and especially, again, in Rikers Island, 80% of those inmates were held pre-trial, awaiting their trial. Technically, they should have been presumed innocent while they were in there, yet they were treated like they were convicted, and oftentimes treated like animals.
80%.
Less than human. Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah,
And that's because
there
they
are a
didn't
few
have the
people on
money.
Rikers Island who have been convicted and are waiting to get sentenced or are on a parole hold and are just like waiting the timeout. But when you get arrested and bail is set, you go to Rikers Island. And you wait.
If you can't pay, basically.
If you can't pay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a crime to be poor, essentially.
Right. There's a complete imbalance of justice.
Has there been any reform for right to a speedy trial?
Yes, there has, in fact. That was another reform that came early during the course of Kalief's case, where there were attempts made, and there are attempts made to expedite cases where someone's confined or incarcerated, so that they're not languishing in jail for 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. Well,
and the thing about Kalief's case was, like, look, it's one fucking witness, right? There was one witness who said Kalief robbed him, took his backpack. Okay, this isn't like a federal RICO case. There aren't like multiple defendants, right? It's not like we have to convene 8 lawyers at every court hearing and, one can't show up and we have to adjourn it. And we need documents from the city, or we have video. We didn't have anything. It was one fucking witness. Come on in, come fucking testify. Is he guilty or innocent, people? That's it. Come
Right.
on. It was such bullshit. It's like that any prosecutor could have tried that case. It's like first year fucking teach you that in the DA's office.
Can you talk about what's the advantage, Paul? And I don't know if we want to get directly into like the prison industrial complex, but like
what I will say was, I'm sorry, is that they basically blew off his case because they figured out he's just another fucking black kid who's going to take a plea because he had a probation hold, and he's going to get some time on probation, which he got, which he was convicted of or sentenced to when he was like 15 or 16 for some other type of bullshit thing that I would have gotten really in trouble for, like the shit we were doing when we were 15.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, different circumstances, different skin color, different outcomes, discrepancies. Mm-hmm. But, the prosecutors just thought, well, look, we have a witness. He's going to take a plea. We'll just drag it out until he takes something, and it wasn't really until they got called out by a judge to get that witness in to push them to go to trial, and there wasn't just one prosecutor on that case. There was like 4 or 5 and their supervisors.
So what's the advantage, or is it just blatant indifference? Why keep
digressing?
No, please do. This is fantastic. But is there an advantage, or is it blatant indifference from what's going on?
Everyone.
Yeah. Maybe that's too broad, but where's the advantage?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Where's the advantage to keeping somebody like Kalief in the system? Is it just blatant indifference to keep going? Oh, we'll put it off.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. It's statistics. They have hundreds of cases. They don't fucking care.
Yeah.
What do they care? They live in a bubble. A lot of these prosecutors come out right out of law school, and listen, I remember when I first started, I didn't know any better, until I kind of saw and got jaded by what I was seeing around me. But, they just, I don't know. Part of it is indifference, really, most of it. Because, you never meet the defendant, you never meet them. Mm-hmm. You don't know anything about them except their rap sheet. And that's just going to tell you they've been arrested before, maybe. So, and maybe a lawyer will call you and say, hey, my client's a good guy. He's got family. It wasn't him, whatever. But it's not really always the case, or rare, actually.
And they just wanted to get him on something so badly. Like it broke my heart in the documentary when they're like, okay, well, we'll drop it from a felony to 2 misdemeanors and you can walk out of here today. And no fucking way in hell would I get back on that bus. I'd be like, yep, give me the misdemeanors. Yeah. But that's just a way to keep people of color in poverty, because then you have a felony or 2 misdemeanors or whatever. You can't get a job. It fucks with your public housing, everything. Like, it's
isn't that really fucked up to do to somebody? Like, okay, we think you fucking robbed somebody. That's a felony. You're looking at like 3.5 to 7 years. Okay, fucking 2.5 years later, you know what? I don't know if we have a witness. I don't know if this is really a good case because the witness was fucking said it happened on 2 different dates. And who knows if the fucking witness picked out the wrong kid. We don't fucking know. The witness was in fucking Mexico. You know what? Let's give him a misdemeanor so it doesn't look that bad. Like, we didn't fuck up that bad. And we'll let him go home. And, so he'll just suck it up and live the rest of his life with all the shit he went through at Rikers Island. He'll be okay, though. Or maybe he'll just come back.
Right. Well, I mean, isn't that kind of the hope? Because I don't know if it's Rikers, but most of the prison system in America is privately owned, right?
I believe so, yes.
Not Rikers, or Rikers too?
Not Rikers. but Rikers has, I think, private companies as part of it, as part of it,
And I
with
know,
regards, feeding food and all that stuff.
right. And the 13th Amendment basically states that like slavery is not allowed, but you can keep Black people imprisoned if they're criminals, right? Which kind of, I think, led to the whole campaign of Black people are scary criminals and To Kill a Mockingbird and all that kind of shit, right?
I think that's fair to say.
Kind of sum it up like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
All right.
I don't think that's far-fetched at all.
So has the climate changed today, Paul, do you think, like today versus when Kalief was taken into custody? Like, is our country moving in the right direction? What's changed, if anything?
I mean, I look at these protests that happened over the summer,
Right.
trying to be topical.
Mhm.
And,
Yep.
there was, wow, what an amazing outpouring of support we saw from people who came out, protested. But I think, just to me, it was like, I'll believe it when I see it, and I think we've already seen a return to normalcy, to the sort of how things were. Maybe it's improved a little bit, but not so much, So I mean, I try to be optimistic, but I wasn't so convinced that the protests were really going to do anything. I mean, think about the protests themselves and like that whole fucking dichotomy, right? So you have peace protesters peacefully protesting police brutality, and you have police officers, brutalizing these peaceful protesters on video without any regard, like unprovoked. Like, you have no idea what they did to some of these people, like the fucking audacity. So does that make me think that, that am I convinced things are just going to change just like that? No, they're not. Unfortunately, I mean, it'd be great, but they're not, and, there's a lot to that. Probably more than, maybe that's over my head. But, I think that some reforms are made, and those reforms were, beneficial. But I think there's still a long way to go. But I think even, with the pandemic, definitely the cash bail thing. I mean, it probably would have happened anyway, because no one's setting bail on anyone now with this pandemic, unless it's a pretty egregious crime. So maybe that put things in perspective for people.
It's kind of like you were saying, over the summer, all of the protests were kind of going off and there was a lot of attention, and, now it's died down a little bit. When I reached out to you and you said that you had never done a podcast, I was
maybe one. I might have done one.
Okay. Well, I had mixed emotions because I was really excited that we were getting this exclusive, but I was also like fucking pissed off that why don't you have more people knocking on your door asking for interviews and stuff? I did a quick Google, and at least one of Stephen Avery's lawyers has done a good amount of interviews. I couldn't exactly tell, but at least half a dozen to a dozen. Do you think that has to do with the fact that Stephen is white and Kalief's Black?
I haven't thought of it that way. No.
Okay.
I never thought of it that way. I just think that, are you asking me if I feel some type of way about that?
No.
That I did.
But do you?
That more hasn't happened? Maybe.
You're like,
Maybe, yeah, maybe. A lot of promises were made to me. But, I just keep trying to do what I do, and sometimes I don't feel like doing it because I'm so disheartened, But it turns out I'm just good at it. So, and people need my help, But yeah, no, it would be nice to do more things like this and to speak about more things like this. So there, there's always opportunities out there and different things that come your way. So I'm not like keeping anything with me. I just that's how things worked out. It was an awesome documentary. I know my part in it was more than probably most people would even know, but my involvement with it, I pretty much made that whole thing happen. Not to pat
Yeah.
myself on the back, but so do I feel like I wasn't taken care of enough by some of the people I worked with? Yeah, but at the end of the day, I was an attorney and I was representing Kalief's family at the time. So I had to look out for them. And, there was a lot happening behind the scenes. So, it's all good. It's all good. I mean, it's just sort of how it worked out.
Yeah, I just
Wow,
hope
am I being
that
cryptic?
no. I just want
Right. They told me I looked like a young Robert De Niro and they were promising me a spin-off show.
He's like, I'm gonna tell you what the fuck is up.
Didn't
You
really
know
work.
what? Actually, though, now that you say that, I do see the Robert De Niro. Now that
Yeah.
you mention
Okay.
it. Yeah.
I bought it all too. I gave them whatever they wanted.
Fuck. Well, I mean, I wish that you did, because
You know what? I knew there was what?
it needs to be talked about. It needs to not be forgotten. It needs to not be like a fucking cause of the week, It's just like I'm just why wasn't there more? Let's get this fucking guy. We need to talk about this more. This needs to be, I don't know. It just upsets me.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But I think at the end of the day, like that business, documentary and filmmaking and the Hollywood types, it's very unpredictable and it's nothing that I feel bad about. At the end of the day, I know what I did for Kalief and his family, most importantly, as an attorney and as like a man. So I can have, I have no regrets about that. And I was able to be part of this and make this documentary happen, whether anyone knows it or not. It doesn't fucking matter to me. Like I know what I did, but like that the whole world knows about. So and it really changed the whole entire system. So, and at the end of the day, if that helps people and if that makes our system better, that's the most important thing to me. For me, it's just like I'm fortunate. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I had no idea this would have happened to me. But it changed my life too. So, it's not like I haven't gotten my recognition, and I always I'm humbled by that. I have a lot of girlfriends on Instagram, so that's always nice when I get compliments.
Well, we're definitely gonna promote this shit out of you and the documentary and your law firm.
I really appreciate that.
If anybody's out there having any civil rights issues, call Paul. But you told me that the fucking Nexium people called you to try to represent Keith Raniere, right?
See, that's not the publicity I've been looking for, Ashley.
Okay.
I was hoping for something a little bit more legit,
Oh,
well, we're doing an episode on
But
Nexium.
I was down on my luck,
like right now.
Got slow for a while until the protests happened. So I had to listen to them.
Well, you didn't take the case, did you?
No, I can't really get into it, but I did have conversations with them.
That feeds perfectly into a question, Paul. So what cases now, like what have you taken since Kalief's story and case? And are there any other cases that you want to give cause to right now, or maybe educate our listeners about?
I think, what I did find myself getting was a lot of jail cases. So I did, after Kalief's story came out, I did, begin to represent a lot of people who were in jail, like women that were in Rikers Island that were sexually abused and raped by guards, which really that's like the worst thing. Like when I get a case like that It's so hard for me not to take that personally, you know. A couple of suicides at upstate prisons where, you know, inmates just mysteriously died. You know, tragic stuff like that that really impacts a family. And then, you know, I have a case where a couple of people who spent, you know, several years in jail, and either their cases were overturned and they came home, or in particular, I'm representing one man who is in his 60s now, who spent 5 years in Brooklyn, um, incarcerated at Rikers Island. And he was arrested when he was 55 for this really savage, vicious stabbing of like one of his neighbors. And they held him for 5 years pending his case. And here was a man who was so feeble and frail, who, you know, had a cognitive disability, mental and physical, that really couldn't hurt a fly. Really one of the nicest men I've met, and so like so gentle. And they actually kept him in jail for 5 years, and he just came home a couple years ago. So just stories like that really, they get me so worked up, you know, and they get me so passionate about what I'm doing. But you know, they're very intense, and they definitely take a toll on you because, you know, you have families that really rely on you to help you and get the truth, you know, because it's not really about money, you know, and unfortunately our justice system is about money. Money is a symbol of justice. Nobody writes a letter and says, hey, we're really sorry about what happened. It doesn't work that way. They just pay you. So, but most of the families I deal with and most of the people I deal with, it's not about money. It's about just justice, you know, like about knowing the truth about what happened, finding out the truth, and having accountability. You know, that's really important to them. So, you know, but, you know, it's interesting because it always has a twist and a turn. You know, when quarantine started and I was really home with my kids a lot and everything was closed, the courts and the office, and it was really hard there wasn't a lot of work that you can do. Everything was so slow. You know, it's time that you start kind of reflecting and thinking, well, maybe there's something else out there for me to do. And, you know, obviously I'm always thinking like, what could be the next thing? And then like these protests happen, and that just like swept me away into that for like a couple of months. So, you know, I don't know what the next big thing is going to be in the criminal justice system. Hopefully there's nothing. But I'm sure there'll be something on the way.
Kind of speaking about families getting justice, to wrap it up, I know this is going back a little bit, but I know that Kalief's brother, at also a very young age, 16 or 17, right, got accused of being the Boston rapist. And that proved to pretty much not be true, right? Is that correct? Or can't talk about it?
I think I would rely on what was. I don't know enough about that to comment on it.
Okay.
I think he was accused of that, but I think it resulted in something less than that. I think that was discussed or portrayed in the documentary as to what the result was. I don't recall what it was, to be honest with you.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, Cam, wasn't it that they found him to be not guilty, or that? Yeah.
Was it not guilty? Okay.
I know he served a little bit of time, and then if I remember correctly, then it was like he was also sent to Rikers for a period of time, because I remember thinking, wow, they both were in that absolute fucking hellhole at different times. But yeah, I don't ultimately think that he got convicted.
Yeah, I don't think
it was the same scenario. They couldn't post. They didn't have the money for bail. You get sent to
I think it was something that was exaggerated, and then he took like a lesser plea. That's my understanding of it.
Okay, that's what I think I remember too. And it's just sad because I think it just shows how this entire family was just ripped apart by this shitty ass, quote unquote justice system that we have. And it was just really heartbreaking to me then to find out that, his mother never really got the justice for him that she was seeking before she passed away, which kind of seemed like, this speculation, but perhaps was due to a broken heart because her kids said that once all this stuff started happening, that's when her health really started declining. So
Oh, it was a broken heart. It was definitely a broken heart.
it
It
just
was
fucked
definitely
this
a
whole
broken heart.
family. Just,
Yeah,
yeah.
and there's a couple of his brothers were really close to him. So, you know,
I can't even,
I think that's what makes the whole case bittersweet, because even though the case ultimately settled and all of that, I think once he passed away, and especially after his mother passed away, I think any settlement or trial or it would just felt sweet to me that the person that deserved it the most didn't live to see it,
Mhm.
and he didn't live to see it because a system just wrecked him and left him irreparably damaged to an extent that he just couldn't come back from that, despite having some really good moments in between. So
Yeah, this is I think Cam and I feel pretty similarly that we tell a lot of really fucked up stories. That's kind of what we do here. And
it's the most fucked up thing that's ever happened to
this
anyone.
is the most upsetting thing we've researched. Like I was
If you
fucking
think about all the fucking
furious.
people who involved, who could have, should have done something but didn't, it's not a couple. It's talking about professionals, attorneys and judges and police officers, people that should have done something that did nothing, did nothing. I mean, it's a really tragic thing that I don't think it could be replicated, but it's terrible.
Yeah, I can't imagine honestly like
And
what
to
you
consider he was a kid, he was a
yeah.
kid, he was a kid.
And in his words, he said something in an interview. He said, if I had taken that plea deal, no one would have heard my story. No one would know. And we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. And when he said, it's just like he was so insightful. I felt like I was speaking to an adult, and I look back and he was 21 at the time of an interview. I was a fucking idiot at 21 years old.
Well,
I
he was
mean,
all grown up by then,
no
He had a
shit.
record
I mean,
age.
I
You
just
tried
went,
sleep. You tried sleeping in a cold cell for 2 years. See what
well,
it does to you. And getting fed, 3 meager meals a day when you're starving.
Maybe,
Oh,
right? Like maybe
see how
it
yeah.
felt like it. did they
But
did they
I
rate
think that was the important thing about like his message, because when I talked to him about going to the press with it, I knew it was like, I just wanted to I wanted him to feel comfortable, and that's what I do with any of my clients who I think have a really important story to tell. And that was his message. I think had it not gone to the media, had it not been in the press and really gotten the attention that it did, then you know what? They would give him a little small check maybe for a little bit of money, and the case would have got swept under the rug, and no one would have known this would happen to him. So maybe there have been cases before this. People call me all the time. I don't know if they're crazy or not, but saying that the same thing happened to them. But no one would have known about this.
Did they raise the legal age of responsibility from 16 to 18?
To be charged as an adult?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's 17 now.
So still a fucking
16 will
minor,
still get prosecuted. 16s get prosecuted as juveniles.
but 17, you're an adult.
Actually, I have to double check that.
Okay.
16, you could be charged as an adult depending on the crime. But I don't think they put you in Rikers Island. I don't. I could be wrong. A
So
lot of shit was passed, Ashley. It's hard to keep up.
you don't know all of the laws and
No,
reforms
no,
from the
no.
past, 10 years
No.
off the top of your head. Well, we don't want to take, too much of your time. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been absolutely, well, terrible, but a delight talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely I thank you.
I know
I
you've
really
got a really,
appreciate the fact that you reached out to me.
oh,
Means-
well, thank you so much for coming on our little old podcast. Did you have
No,
any
come on, we're
last
gonna make
questions?
it big. We're gonna make it big.
Hey, it's on the way. It's on the way there. I sent you some stickers, right? You could-
Oh yeah,
you can
my
put
daughters
those-
thought they were really cool.
Oh,
I
perfect.
didn't know where they came from. I thought they were theirs.
Tell
Yeah,
them
I got the stickers. Where should I put them?
on
I'll
your
give it to
you
them.
can slap them on your business cards. Hand,
All right, cool.
we'll just tag team. Just like call me for the law and then go listen to this podcast.
All right, that sounds good.
All right, Cam, do you have any last words or?
One thing that just keeps popping into my head, and it can be a quick thing, is just like, for the average person who's listening who feels like, I want to do something, are there little steps that people can take, or who's sitting here going, I want to help? Is there a way?
I mean, I do get that question a lot, and
Yeah.
I do appreciate people who want to get involved. There are organizations you can become part of.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, make your voice heard. And social media is very powerful right now, like
Mm-hmm.
extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
This young man, like Matthew Russian, just got released or pardoned. I forget what state it's in. So I think just to be outspoken and to be involved in some organizations is great. It is sort of the little things that add up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just lucky that I'm an attorney and I have the ability to help create this change.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, it's really hard to change such a big system or structure like this as an individual. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But everything helps.
I like that. No, that's make your voices heard, everybody. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, you can always like throw a couple bucks to some organizations that you feel are doing a good thing, right? Oh, no, maybe.
Depends which one.
Do your research before donating.
Do your research.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been another edition of an exclusive Patreon interview. So thanks you guys for subscribing to Patreon. You're our favorite. We love you, and we'll see you next month.
You can follow me. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Come on, you didn't.
Rude. I know.
I thought you wanted me to go places.
I do. I'm rude.
I'll take
Okay.
a picture.
Wait. I just made an ugly face. I'll get a good screenshot.
Oh, please. I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
We'll send you some. Yeah.
I'm technically deficient.
Oh, wait. Hold on. I'll do it right now. Shift Command 4. Okay. So everybody make a nice smile. Okay. We did it for the gram.
We did it for
Okay.
the gram.
So I'm very rude. Paul, where could we find you?
Oh, PVP ESQ on Instagram and Twitter. Best way to reach me.
And are you is there any other interviews or Instagram channel videos you want to?
Let's see. I'm
promote?
kind of focusing on the criminal work right now because
Okay.
crime is up in New York. And, that's kind of like my bread and butter, like what I used to do when I first started. So I'm kind of like back doing a little bit of that. And, it's a different pay system. So I got some criminal cases, some criminal work to get involved in, and that's always interesting. It's completely totally different dynamic, but it's good getting back to court a little bit and doing what I know. But I am, let's see, I did do some speaking at like law schools after the documentary came out, and I sort of tell like this type of story. It's called like I was doing the Love and Justice tour. I'm big on that.
Cool.
And I did have a show on Instagram called Love and Justice with my best friend. I'm not too old to be ashamed to admit that. My best friend Don, that we did over the summer. So I think we're coming up and we're about to do season 2 in a couple of weeks. So
I listened a little this morning. You guys were getting deep about love and relationships. It was cool.
Yes. I don't know why people are so fascinated by that.
Because it's complicated as fuck.
Yes, it is. And you know what? We talked about protests so often, and we went through a time where we were just talking about the protests. That's hard, really. It's hard to really break that down over and over and over. It's hard to really talk about that after a while, after you just kept seeing it on and on and on for so many weeks. So
yeah,
love and stuff like that is always fun.
Yeah, you got to switch it up, balance.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, thank you so much again, Paul, and thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Day.
Cheers.
Wait.
Bye.